Saw overnight at 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning, crowds gathering and growing, and then they kind of dissipated for a couple hours, but they've reformed along the Little Havana area of Miami down in Florida. And people are, it's really, Fidel Castro is dead, and a rally is breaking out. You see Trump signs, American flags, Cuban flags, people celebrating the death of a dictator.
And we this morning are trying to really leverage our resources from all around the world, and all of our shows, like The Five. We've got Dana sitting here beside us, and we're lucky to have that. But also lucky to have Juan Williams on the phone, interrupting his family vacation just for a few moments, because Juan, not only are you one of our just outstanding journalists and good friends, but you actually had a chance to meet Fidel Castro. And I've heard stories from former Congressman Bill Richardson and others about meeting Fidel Castro, and even if they completely disagreed with everything he stood for, he would have these marathon sessions with journalists, sometimes going through the night, 9, 10, 11 hours, eating, smoking, drinking. What was it like to meet him?
Well, for me, it was more like the grand personality. What happened was I was covering Jesse Jackson's 1984 campaign, and Jackson went through Havana and had a meeting with Castro. And you're exactly right. I mean, Castro had a speech during Jackson's visit, and the speech lasted close to 11 hours. People would go in and out, he would come and go, and Castro would still be speaking. But at the very end, Jackson had a plane, and Castro came on the plane, and he made a point of introducing me to Castro. I was surprised, and then he joked that I wanted to pull Fidel's beard, and I was a pest of a reporter. But it was my one-time meeting Fidel. But I got to tell you, what sticks in my mind are two things. One is the Mariel boat lift. I don't know if you remember, this was 1980, and about more than 100,000 Cubans were pushed off the island by Fidel Castro and into Miami. And for a while, some people were held at the Orange Bowl, but then it became like a refugee camp under a highway. I think it was Interstate 95. I think that's Interstate 95, and it was just a mess. And it was terrible conditions and a challenge to the U.S. government. You know, how do you cope with this? How do you deal with it? Castro had emptied the jails, the mental institutions, in addition to people who simply wanted to get out of there. But I thought at that point things had just broken down. That was evidence of how he had become a total dictator and a menace to his own people.
Juan, as a journalist, you've covered several presidents. Reflect for a moment, if you would, on President Obama, who took a step to ease restrictions that we had with Cuba. And what do you think this means going forward when he has about 2 months left in office?
Well, I think that, going back to, Ronald Reagan took a hard stand. I mean, obviously, everybody knows about what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis under President Kennedy. But then you come forward, Jimmy Carter made an effort. It looked like he was going to try and loosen some of the relations and the embargoes and the like. But then here comes the Mariel boat lift that I just spoke about, Dana. And then if you come forward from that, Bill Clinton looked like he was trying to ease some relations, to generate some friendship. And again, what you saw was Castro violate that and just become this angry dictator of a figure antagonistic towards the United States and towards, I might just say, not the United States, but democratic ideals in his own country. And then you see Obama now with the lifting of the embargo. I think that what you have is a situation going forward where people will say, what does Raul Castro do? Does he continue down the path of anger towards the United States? Or does he say, you know what, we have an opportunity here now to open the door to democratic freedoms and democratic ideals for his own people first and foremost, and then send that message of friendship to the United States.
Donald Trump this morning tweeting simply, Fidel Castro is dead. He said in the past in debates that he thought it was a bad deal that Barack Obama cut with the Cuban regime. Raul Castro is still there. What opportunity exists for President-elect Donald Trump to change the relationship or change conditions on that island for the Cuban people?
Well, I think that, it's interesting because Donald Trump, the businessman, has been very interested in doing business in Cuba. And I wonder if that instinct won't serve him well in terms of saying, here are economic opportunities where U.S. investment can make a difference. Under President Obama, you've seen U.S. companies begin some effort to see what business is possible. I think that the businessman Donald Trump will try to encourage that instinct on the same basis, by the way, that Obama did, which is the belief doesn't make my heart happy. Someone who was born in Latin America and knows the horrors of Cuban. You know, Fidel Castro was interfering in governments all over the world, but specifically in Latin America, and a real hero to people who I think of as villains like Hugo Chavez. But I'm telling you that there's the opportunity here to bring American culture, democracy, political ideals into Cuba. And I wonder if President-elect Trump at the moment won't believe that there is that opportunity because of the success of American capitalism.
And Juan, we're showing pictures, among others. You know, Fidel Castro met with a couple of pontiffs, Pope John Paul II as well as Pope Benedict. He went to a Jesuit high school, I think Brett Baer was reporting earlier in his obituary. Give us again a little sense of what it was like. You were somebody, you know, a rare person who actually got to meet him.
Well, I think that the thing that really struck me was how Cubans, especially, you know, when I was there in '84, Cubans had almost like he was beyond belief. He was an icon. He was also a martyr. I mean, obviously a Revolutionary War hero. But the problem was that there was so much disappointment in the reality of the lives they lived. So you would run into people who said, oh, I'm educated, I have a good education, I have good health care. And then you'd run into people who were denied economic opportunity, people whose relatives were in jail, the women in white. You'd run into people who were involved in trying to sell you things to get American dollars because of the dual economy on the island.
Sure.
And when you talk to Castro himself, it was as if he was totally delusional.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like, oh, no, everybody loves me. Everybody thinks I'm great. And he would blame the United States and blame me for being an American. I mean, it's just like craziness.
Sure.
And
Juan,
yeah.
We love you and your insights, but we don't want this to become a Castro speech and go on for 11 hours, you know. So, no, we're kidding.
That's possible with me.
Juan, we'll see you back on the 5 on Monday. Thank you.
Well done, Juan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Yep. Big news this morning, of course.